The secrets of the Earth's moon revealed in ancient texts of Greek mythology. Greek philosophers knew a lot about the moon. Thales, who is considered the father of Greek and world philosophy, was the first to say that the moon receives light from the sun and the first to calculate its diameter and orbit. Xenophanes mentions that his teacher Socrates described it, quote, a large hollow sphere in which there are seas and lands inhabited by people like us, end quote. How did Socrates know that the moon is hollow? Now we know that when one of the spacecraft from NASA was thrown onto the surface of the moon rang like a bell for almost 3 hours, showing that it was hollow. So Socrates says the large hollow sphere in which there are seas and lands inhabited by people like us. Words of Socrates supported by modern astronomers. Pythagoras narrates that he made turns around the moon with the vehicles of the gods who lived there, while he states that the lunar day is 15 times bigger than the Earth as it is. Pythagoras also insisted that the moon is inhabited by divine beings similar to humans, but taller, blonder, and much more beautiful. All the knowledge of Pythagoras, mathematics, music, geometry, physics, states that it is knowledge he received from the celestial beings with whom he had contact, constant contact. We have many references to the moon from texts of Greek mythology that refer to gods and demigods. The Greek god Orpheus, the son of Apollo, the most regular traveler of the moon in Sirius, tells us, the moon has mountains, states, and houses. Its surface is land like the earth, and it is inhabited by divine societies. Orpheus knew the lunar calendar of 12 months and the phases of the moon. It talks about the earth's rotation around the sun, the earth's temperate, tropical, and polar regions, the lunar eclipses, the solstices, the equinoxes, the motions of the planets, and the universal attraction, and claims that the inhabitants of the moon are who wandered from planet to planet. All these claims of Orpheus refer to ancient texts of Plutarch and Diogenes Laertius. A lot of information comes from ancient texts, and they come to us, they talk about Telchines of Rhodes and the Kavirs of Samothrace, who disappeared according to legend after a great flood. Their technological development was such that it allowed them to leave the Earth and be saved on the Moon or Mars on bases used by these gods, these star beings, during the colonization of the Earth. The Godfather reports that Phaethon made 30 revolutions around the Moon, traveled to Aphrodite, that is Venus, and often visited the poles of our Earth. Dionysius, Artemis, and Hercules had traveled to the moon, and Idmon was traveling there in his chariot that looked like a sparkling comet, giving very accurate information about the invisible side of the moon, something that modern man did just a few years ago. Lukianos, of Greek origin from Samosata, Syria, in 120 AD, read an ancient manuscript and wrote in his book True History, although he called it a fairy tale, scientifically accurate information, which has been verified in our time, reached the moon. So, do modern human spaceships for the moon? He entered a well that had mirrors above and could see the whole Earth. This is a state-of-the-art telescope that used it to see people on Earth. The king of the moon was Endymion, who was taken from the Earth and taken to the moon and made king. That's according to Greek mythology. And he describes 3-engine planes, 3-headed flying vultures, modern binoculars. Anyone could wear them and they could see far away. And warriors in space costumes. Phaeton's army were people like us, and that's why they wore temperature uniforms. It also describes trips to the zodiac stars, as well as anchoring similar to that of modern cosmonauts in the Bermuda area. Finally, he describes a war between the inhabitants of the moon and Sirius, which he stated he had visited. Quote, air battles took place and terrible weapons were used and the Sirius won, end quote. After we've recorded the most important facts and stories from ancient Greece, traveling 2,500 years BC, and think how it's possible for all this to be discussed by the ancient Greeks about the moon, a time when there was no science fiction, and ask us how it's possible for ancient mythology to be able to touch today's reality and still be characterized as myth. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.